This changes everything as we have multiple Leafs updates to go over today, particularly surrounding a couple of key players. And this new information not only has fans fired up, but changes the outlook of this team as we approach the beginning of the regular season. We're going to break down exactly what these updates are and discuss what it means going forward, as well as a few other comments and an interesting note on John Tavares as well. Ton to go over today, folks. Before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Your guys' support has been unbelievable, and the regular season just around the corner. So if you're a part of that 71% who aren't subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's a lot to go over today, and more comments are starting to fly out, and news is starting to pick up now. We're going to be talking about one player really. We'll also touch on Austin Matthews as well, but one player in particular that has not only been kind of in the in the conversation a lot surrounding some of the new Leafs that have joined and who they're impressed with, a bunch of different things. And let's start with Morgan Rielly, as Brad Treliving today came out. And this is yet, you can add him to the list of people who have praised Morgan Rielly for his offseason work, how he's feeling, the condition rather, he's in through his conditioning regime this offseason, which we'll also dive into. You can see here, he spoke on him and said, he's a really big piece for us. So I didn't say really big. I'm going to add the really. He's a big piece for us. He has to put in the work this summer, and he has ultimately put in the work this summer, and that he did a lot of reflecting this summer. That's what Morgan Rielly said, and he's prepared to make a greater impact. And we have a couple of actual statistics about he actually lost some weight, which could be interesting. Darius, this is a player that, like we've discussed in the past, it truly, a lot relies on him this upcoming year. He has the ability to, and we've seen a couple of years ago, carry the team defensively, offensively as well at times, like with the playoffs a few years ago. This is really crucial, and hopefully, of course, this isn't just lip service. Hopefully this is actually what's going to be happening, but this is very big nonetheless.
Yeah, we have other updates to get to later in the video in terms of the training camp roster. A lot has come out over the last, couple of hours, but one thing that did come out is obviously they weigh the players and see who's been putting in that work in the offseason, and Morgan Rielly is lighter this year. He's coming in more in shape, and we've been talking about that over the course of the last couple of days, that a lot of players were praising him. Obviously, we don't get a look at some of the early skates that a lot of these guys do, but some of the players were on the ice already, and a lot of them, like Nicolas Waugh, like Austin Matthews, a couple other people. Now Brad Treliving is saying that, they had a conversation at the end of last season with Morgan Rielly, and they were very candid. And I think it went something like, hey, you weren't really good in these areas this year, and you really need to improve in these areas if we're going to find success. And we know that you can come up here, and we need you up here, or else, we're not going to find success as a team. So they had a conversation like that at the end of last season. By all accounts, everyone's saying, he took it to heart, and he tried to put in, the most work possible this offseason to get into the best shape that he possibly can to have an impact for this team this year. So I think we're going to see a really good Morgan Rielly this year. I've been saying all summer, we've been talking about, trade scenarios and all of that, and what could make sense. I think the best case scenario is Morgan Rielly comes into this year and he has a really good year, and I think that he will. And we've talked about that since last year. And he's going to have Brandon Carlo, who's also bigger now. He put on some more weight, so he's going to be throwing bodies around this season. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But all in all, I think he's going to have a good season. I think he's going to bounce back, and I think it's very clear what this organization needs from him. He took that to heart. He did some reflecting this year, and I think we're going to see one of the best versions of Morgan Rielly this season.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you mentioned how important he is. Brad Treliving said he had a candid conversation, rather, with Morgan Rielly at the end of last season, and Rielly appears to have taken it too hard. And we don't know, we're not privy to the information. No one is really of what that exact conversation was outside of the people within the organization, and probably just Brad Treliving and Morgan Rielly. But his name was thrown in a lot of trade talks, whether that be at last year's deadline, last offseason, of course, this offseason now, because of his lack of play, lack of, I guess, especially defensively, like the lapses that he's had where it was clearly mental. And you can see here again, he doubled down that he's a big piece for us. Getting Morgan Rielly back the level he's capable of will have a big impact on our team. And that's what I'm getting at as well. That's what we're getting at here. I'm not a huge Morgan Rielly fan. I know you are, Darius. You're a fan of the player. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but there's no doubt, and we saw it a couple years ago, literally 2 years ago, he's had back-to-back bad seasons, last year being the worst, especially since he signed that extension. It's time for him to step up, and it's good that we have a GM now who's, pretty open with us, pretty open with the media, so we can hear about conversations like this. And I'm excited to see what that actual impact is. He's down 6 pounds, I believe it came out, which, again, he's lighter, which I think for Morgan Rielly is probably the way that he should go, be a bit more agile on his feet, and especially for someone who makes an impact offensively. Brandon Carlo, on the other hand, gained however many pounds he gains, 5 or 6 pounds there. I think he can use his body more effectively as well, and that'll help him. So it's that time of year, but any final thoughts on Rielly before we move on to Matthews and an update on him as well?
Yeah, definitely. Different play styles, right? Like for Brandon Carlo to come in heavier, that makes sense for the type of game that he plays. And he's 7 pounds heavier than last training camp with the Boston Bruins. So for Morgan Rielly, yeah, more agile. Like how many times last season did he, find himself out of position and he couldn't get back in time, right? Like so many times last season, he was lacking on the defensive side of the puck. So again, I think we're going to see a really, really good version of Morgan Rielly this year. I think they made it absolutely clear to him that, this can't continue. What happened last year, he has to be better. He's one of the leaders on the team and he's a number one pairing defenseman, or he's supposed to be, right, on this team. So you got to play like it. And I'm sure he's going to be, taking on different roles this year. Maybe the power play makes $7.5 million. He has to play to that level. So I think they made it very clear to him. I think he took it to heart. He put some things into action, and I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, let us know down below your thoughts are on that. And let's dive into some big updates surrounding, of course, I guess not really Mitch Marner, but we'll quickly, finish up on the Mitch Marner conversation here. Rielly spoke out on Mitch Marner and said, people make choices as a player and as teammates up here, you have to carry on. And let's shift now our focus to Austin Matthews. A ton of updates on his front, how he's feeling, his injury. But let's start, of course, with the Marner departure, because that's always going to be the first question asked for what seems like the end of time here. Those were always tough conversations to have. He'll be a friend of all of ours for life, but he added, he made this decision and we're moving on. We wish him the best. And I love this response. I think it's probably time to actually move on from that now. Like, who cares at this point? We're at the point where actual hockey is about to be played here in the next month or so. So Austin Matthews, I'm sure they're going to remain great friends. He's going to miss him. I don't think Berube is going to miss the core four talk. I also don't think, Austin Matthews is going to, not necessarily, miss Mitch Marner as a friend. Of course, that's going to happen as a teammate. But as the drama that came with it, especially with the core four talk, they can all just take a deep breath. And health-wise, we can also take a deep breath as fans here. As health-wise, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm really happy about that. And he says he will have to manage his workload as the season goes on with the Olympics coming up. And the main focus right now is camp. When that time comes, I can take it on when it comes. And again, we'll probably have a full video covering this. I want to get your thoughts, Darius. Not the most, it is a little bit of a relief. I'm still a little bit scared about it just by the way he's saying he has to manage his workload. And we're already, we're not even, the season hasn't started yet. Makes sense. Clearly, though, this is some sort of injury that he is feeling good, but is going to linger. Maybe for the rest of, not his career, but for the rest of this upcoming season.
Well, I don't mind it, honestly, what he's saying here, and we'll get to the Marner stuff in a second. Again, I want to touch on that, but I don't mind that he's saying he has to manage his workload. It's going to be a loaded season, right? He's going to play in the Olympics. He's probably going to be the captain of Team USA again. So, manage it. It's fine. You want to make sure you're ready to go for the Toronto Maple Leafs playoffs. That's the most important thing at this point, trying to win a Stanley Cup. So I don't mind that. I believe him. I think he's healthy. Whatever he had going on last season, clearly he didn't need surgery for it. So is it something that he has to manage for the rest of his career? We'll never really know, but it just sounds like he's feeling pretty good and he wants to put his best foot forward and score a bunch of goals this year and win a championship. That's what his focus is. So I'll take his word for it at that point. Obviously, I love everything that he's been saying as captain the last little while, and we could deep dive into the Marner stuff, all of that stuff, but he's not doing that. Right, this morning he just said, listen, it's over, let's move on. And we all should. Of course, we're not going to until they play that first game. I think that's really when things will we'll move past all of that, but it's still waiting for that day, of course. But I love that he's saying, just let's move on, right? We're great friends. Of course, we all know that that's going to, remain that way probably for the rest of their lives, but let's move on. He's not part of this team anymore. And let's try and win a championship. We're a more well-rounded team. Let's put our best foot forward. And I like that. I like that energy instead of, dwelling on the past or anything like that. They can't change what happened the last couple of years. They're a different team now. I think they're a well-built team, probably one of the best in the last 10 years. So should be pretty exciting. And I like these comments from Matthews. I have to be honest.
Yeah, pretty good overall. Again, he's feeling good. Things are high. Vibes are high. And to put a bow on this video, John Tavares quickly spoke out on his concern about safety and said, I think it's whether the league or the club, they understand it, or they understand, especially in today's day and age where information is accessible, safety is paramount. You never want to see a teammate go through that. And again, we've seen many instances, not just Mitch Marner, not just the Leafs, where issues like this happen. It's the way it is in 2025. So we'll see if that ever, gets brought back up. And hopefully we won't see that again across any team or any league there. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.